What is up, down, and sideways, you beautiful individuals? It's another epi of League Unlocked. Eric and Mark here with you guys for a cinematic experience of a weekend recap. The finale of the regular season in the LEC, the road show over in Spain. Movistar Mkoi absolutely delivering. I mean, this was basically a perfect event. You had some back and forth. Nobody goes undefeated. It was contested, and you maybe had the two best series of the entire split in the LEC.
I'm giving it a 99 out of 100. I'm deducting 1 point due to the attendance early on the Friday. I think that wasn't maybe the best of looks and maybe the best of organization and planning and communication to the community type of thing. But I still think, where's our high school university crowd at that could have absolutely filled out a little bit more of the spots, maybe vacated by the working crowd during the timing, but I think more than made up for with the attendance and atmosphere that was given on the Saturday and Sunday matches. Very much so a thrilling roadshow from the LEC.
Yeah, I mean, trumpets blaring, different chants throughout. Even if Koi wasn't the team matching up, the crowd was cheering for everybody except for Carmine Corp at this event. The other three squads, they were very much behind. And that KC versus Mkoi series, at least for me, was definitely the best one of the weekend. Insanely back and forth. And this weekend, we kind of saw the top lane meta get completely broken because we saw a Brand, Cassiopeia, Zeri, and the Shyvana a little less so, but Mirwin was insane on that Shyvana. But usually you wouldn't pick any of those champions to be played top.
No, this was, I think, a pretty wild turn within the meta, and I don't know exactly which item, which change and balance point to that is the reason for this change, but we absolutely are seeing that explosion of what options are going to be available, what can be utilized within that top side to gain various advantages within your own lane, but of course for major team fights later on. And I think all of those champions, we saw very much so the impact that they can have added to one of these compositions within that top side.
Yeah, and I mean, the Shyvana was insane out of Mirwin. The Zeri, a little less so. The Brand was basically like Karthus and ARAM, just press all your buttons, go in and die. And I mean, Kana did that to a very serviceable amount. It was obviously Khalees who got the last laugh in that series, but then following that up with, or wrapping it up with the G2 Mkoi series, which again was probably the second best series. Honorable shout out to GX and KC, who we'll get to. But G2 versus Mkoi felt like the perfect wrap to this because it had no undefeated team. Mkoi keeps the fans happy, and you prove that these are very much the top three. And even as Vitality, I'm maybe watching this weekend sweating a bit, seeing the slow level up from these guys. But I gotta say, the synergy for Elyoya and Jojopyun is maybe one of the best in the entire LEC right now.
I think, frankly, this went about as good as possible, more or less, for the LEC, for the teams that were involved within this roadshow. I think it probably was the worst option for Vitality, seeing the way that everyone did play and kind of, again, playing to what we did worry about a little bit. And I think that it will play through no matter how much we can acknowledge it, that you are going to get kind of looked over in certain aspects and whatnot, forgotten about, given the recency bias that plays into anybody's equation, anybody's thought and process on any of these teams and their power levels. You're going to be missing out on that, missing out on this roadshow, and that is a sad little thing for how good Vitality has been this year. But again, focusing in on this roadshow, really did feel like that G2 Movistar Mkoi one was the cherry on top of it all, because this already was the dream Sunday that you had envisioned when you brought in squads like Carmine Corp, the change to Movistar Mkoi and everything else. This type of roadshow, this type of regional power and fandom is exactly what you were trying to tap into and play up towards as the LEC. And again, you got a wonderful weekend of it to showcase.
And obviously, there's been a lot of talk about Jojopyun maybe being better than Caps this split, even though he got slapped around a little in some of these games. Got solo killed. There were some massive gold deficits at times. He bounces back with a solid Galio performance. Alvaro was fantastic across that whole series as he pivots from the Enchanters back to the engaged champions that we know he's so associated and comfortable on. And I know Vitality might be sweating a little, but at the very least, they held on to that top seat heading into playoffs in no short part because of Giant X showing up in a big way against KC, coming back from losing the first game, winning a game that they probably had no business winning, and then coming back to win game 3. We wanted something out of them in this tough matchup over the weekend, and this series alone is enough for me to maybe feel better about them than even Na'Vi heading into these playoffs.
If you're Vitality, you're sending over the best fruit basket edible arrangement or whatever to the boys over at Giant X for the job that they did. And yes, it was messy at times, but absolutely getting across that finish line is the big deal for Giant X. And as you said, getting a marquee performance like this against a squad as high in the rankings as Carmine Corp, very much so, is one that can throw you more so into that conversation as far as these playoff caliber teams. And right up in your lining up in your sights is a squad like Na'Vi in this situation if you are Giant X.
And, Jackie's had some fantastic moments. Much like JoJo, he also got slapped around by Caps. But that's kind of just the nature of going through the LEC and warming up for playoffs. You have to have that inaugural and biannual, now triannual beatdown of Caps on every other mid laner in the league.
I will say, though, even amongst those beatdowns, I will notice Jojopyun kind of has a little bit more of that veteran savvy to himself in this point where, again, a year and a half, 2 years ago would be a situation where he would be completely useless within that game after being shut down in these type of avenues. But he certainly has found a way to keep his focus within these games to have an avenue of being a contributing member, even with some of these individual mistakes or individual losses in a head-to-head type of situation against someone as skilled and storied as Caps.
Yeah, I mean, he did bounce back from a rough early game in that third game especially, and we've seen Caps completely 1v9 games on the Blanc, but later on JoJo was single-handedly zoning 2, 3, sometimes even 4 G2 members on that Galio. So fantastic performance out of him and the rest of the squad, and really everybody who participated in that roadshow. It wasn't just the LEC having these top tier matchups at the top of the table. It wasn't a fancy fun roadshow in the LCS, but even with these direct head-to-heads, I feel like a lot of questions are not answered, and we'll get more of them next weekend. But when we start with that Cloud9 FlyQuest series, what we did learn is Fly can absolutely compete against Cloud9 and the top of the table, even more so than last split. And I think we've already seen the growth because this team's maybe one overextended push into the base away from 2-0ing Cloud9.
I think they are just frankly being older, more experienced from being away, from taking away this series from Cloud9 in this situation. It's absolutely one of those ones where I think you've had someone with maybe an extra year or two of experience within this game at the professional level and what they have seen, you would have been able to have someone in the comms say, all right, everyone take a deep breath, everyone reset, go back to base, whatever we got to do here, and then buckle down for what will be the finish and how we want to close out this game at that point. I think it was a little bit of loosey-goosey, oh my God, we're here type of moment situation for the FlyQuest boys. And you tripped over your own foot type of situation before the finish line. But yes, you are in that race and that conversation for the top of the LCS. And I think at that point, given where the questions were about this roster and how they would perform and what these players' levels would be so early in their career, getting this type of answer and being involved in the question at all for the LCS at the top of it is a very good thing for FlyQuest still.
I mean, Gakos being ready, willing, and excelling on carries and going opposite Thanatos and doing that and holding his own is obviously fantastic signs. Griffin had a much better head-to-head against Blabber than all of the matchups that they had in that lock-in tournament, and even though they're 6-0, there's still some question marks for Cloud9. I think Sven had some very early advantages, but when it comes to team fighting, he's still the main guy that's maybe got a little bit of a question mark sus level around him, because we're thinking internationally, not just winning domestically for Cloud9 at 6-0.
Yeah, it's got to be one of these ones where, again, yes, the expectation, the goal is to be the top within the region, to showcase that, and there are still going to be questions about that, but with the eye towards being a threat, being a contender on the international stage, so it's going to bring some extra scrutiny. And in that regard, yes, there are avenues to be still critical, to be doubtful, or want to see a little bit more from this Cloud9 roster, and you're going to be left wanting more, given the way that the FlyQuest could have very easily, in hindsight, find a way to close out this series against Cloud9 and take it away from them. So still some improvements, even if you are surviving on the record side of things if you're Cloud9.
And because they hold on, they remain the only undefeated team, because Lion Gaming made their statement against Team Liquid. This was very back and forth, close, contested series. Game to game, you could highlight people. We got to see for the first time Castle on the squad as he subbed in, only to lose on the Rise top, and it was Dokla winning. I'm not giving the Jace much credit for that Lion win, but absolutely you're giving Big Dokes a lot of credit for what he did on the Anivia to seal this series.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly going to be something that plays a little bit back into Dokla's favor. Being able to come through in this series and maintain and hold in on that third game is an important one for him, as you said, on that Anivia, making sure that he is a difference maker, is able to make that come through. And again, one of the different champions that you can roll through in that top side that we have seen throughout this year, and finding a way to be that difference maker that you want on your squad. When you're in a position, type of battle, starting spot, whatever, these are big deals. These things can add up and are important for you in regards to that battle. So that was good for him and good for Leon to step out and to be the one that comes out on top in the day.
And again, I think the takeaway, because the LEC was so wild this weekend, it obviously got kind of the headlines, but these two best of three, we're ignoring the Saturday games in the LCS. The Sunday best of threes were some of the most entertaining and competitive games we've had, all split, and even I'll go back to the lock-in that we've had in 2026 for the LCS. So again, this bodes well for playoffs to have these teams playing better at a higher level and actually being good and not disappointing on the day.
I think the only thing that was missing, frankly, in that regard, is just the atmosphere, the attitude, the crowd noise that can come through. I didn't hear
any trumpets at the LCS.
From a roadshow situation compared to the regular studio audience type of situation. So yeah, that is absolutely one of those ones that left you wanting more in comparison to what was going on with the LEC, the roadshow, tuning into K-Drill, whatever type of stuff that was going on throughout the weekend. LCS wasn't quite packing that type of heat, but absolutely when you do step away, you look at the games, you look at the results that came through and where that sets you up for, it is a very interesting and fun picture at that very top of the LCS standings.
Yeah, and I think the Jose Dioto MVP stocks took a steep decline after the head-to-head against Inspired in this one. And of course, the other thing people talking about are the comms that the LCS loves to cut into the out-of-context comms of Inspired borderline flaming his teammates, asking Saint, you got to carry, man, don't go up, don't teleport over here, blah, 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 and only for Saint to tell him to shut up. And I think he's telling him to shut up because we're still in the middle of a game and need to communicate what's going on in the Rift. This isn't a VOD review right now.
Yeah, this is certainly one of those ones where I don't think he's done any favors from the way that this clip has been presented to the broader community at this point, from how their reactions are going to be. I think it's still one of those ones where absolutely you can maybe have some criticism of the individual and how the attitude or the tone that he's taking with it in, again, as you mentioned, the middle of the game, very much so involved, still in action, still up for grabs type of thing. And you can understand Saint's reaction at that point as well, to just be like, look, like, not even meaning shut up in the disrespectful or aggressive type of way, just simply in noise needs to stop because we're in the game and we need to process and focus on everything's going on right now. Revisioning history and going over what has happened isn't going to fix the immediacy of the moment. And I think that there's two hands to that type of one, and I think one of them plays into some of the concerns that we have about Inspired and his attitude and how he does approach problem-solving or teachable moments type of situations, even in the middle of a game, whatnot. But at the same time, you can see his angle and his perspective on what these things are and how he wants to correct some of them.
Yeah, I think usually the point that Inspired is trying to make, I mean, he's a genius in terms of how to play the game, right? He's usually making the right point. It's just when he's making the point and how he's making the point. And I think both of those came true in this game. But yeah, even with the win, it still feels like with the Dokla situation and sometimes how Com's going, we're one bad series away from things completely falling apart for Lion.
It really does get to the picture of late game Jenga tower. Think of the Jenga tower and the most unstable base conformation that you could ever think of, the formation of it with how many pieces are left there. And this feels like a matchup where, okay, take away one of the Team Liquid bricks and it didn't topple over. We got the brick out. Thanks to Mr. Dokla's special touch at the end, pulls it out. Now you got to place it on top of the Jenga tower, and that is the comms, every situation around, and every match that we go through, it isn't even shaky or stable at the base of this Jenga tower. That's how you feel about the situation with Leon.
Might not always have a Berserker Corki Penta clean team fight to assure things end on the right foot for Lion Gaming. Things are ending on the right foot more often than not now for T1 over in the LCK. We got the big matchup. It was a rough week for D plus Kia. First, you had the KT Rollster one. You saw them getting completely scolded, lambasted by CV Max after that one, only to follow that up with maybe a worse performance against T1. This felt like a grand opportunity for Shiwu to be like, nah, I'm a top 3 top laner. Let me take this over. And then we get to see Doran have his best series of the split. And by the way, Doran quietly maybe been the most consistent T1 player this split outside of Kyria.
Which is maybe a crazy statement, and I can't
Never thought
tell
I'd
whether
say
that... I don't know if that means there's underlying power waiting for T1, or if that power just is vacant, and it is simply just Doran occupying the driver's seat for the organization, but driving them to success still in this split has been the rebound run for T1 is the way things are going. And yes, latest victim is, of course, D plus Kia, as you laid out. This is the dilemma that you run into running with a coaching player like CV Max and the type of attitude and emotional swings that he brings. If you lay down the hammer on the guys after a bad performance against Gen G and whatnot, and you are banking on that upswing back in and everything else, but it goes the opposite direction against T1, where do you go from here if you're CV Max? Do you lay down the hammer again on the boys? I don't think you're going to get the results you want in that type of situation. So how do you fix this type of one if you are D plus Kia? Because there still is obviously a little bit of time left. There still is importancy to where you are positioning yourself amongst these top teams in the LCK, but absolutely taking a dire hit this past weekend with, again, the head-to-heads against Gen G and T1 consecutively going against you.
Yeah, I mean, it might be about adapting your coaching style based on your personnel, your players, because now 3 losses in a row, D plus are clearly outside of that top 4 in the LCK in terms of just power level, not even record. But now they got a squad right behind them climbing 4 series in a row. Hanjin Brion getting it done against, yes, another series loss for Nongshim with Diablo. It wasn't even Lahens in the lineup, but this is now 6 series lost in a row for Nongshim. Obviously, all of them not with Diablo, but he has not been the solution they were hoping for.
Yeah, I think that was everybody's thought, is maybe this is the parachute, the safety for both of the parties here, right? For Nongshim to pull themselves out of this situation, and for Diablo to get a new fresh start and to get an opportunity where he is wanted and needed to be that type of player for the team. It has not worked out, and everything negative that's going on with Nongshim is more than valid and reasonable to talk about. I want to focus in on the happiness, the positivity that is the Bros, as you're saying, finding themselves on this streak, finding themselves picking up the wins and in contention for this battle that we talk about within the groupings of the LCK. Oh boy, I can only picture the craziness that would happen if the Bros find themselves in that top picture.
They're 1 or 2 series away from bumping D plus into that Rise group, which, you know, they were there last year, but they started the season, the split so strong, you would not have imagined them being there. But yeah, this is not just the Teddy show. We're getting all these young guns around him stepping up to help Teddy in that bot lane, and people are just rooting for the Bros. They've always had that kind of dark horse fandom. Maybe it's just because of the name Bro. Most likely that's what it is. Lord Morgan used to be there, and he was so likable. Now he's in NA, of course, but something's brewing with the Bros as they are now not firmly, in a playoff spot, at least for the time being. In the LPL, we got the full step into that next contender status. We got the head-to-head JDG and Anyone's Legend, and on the back of Hongq and Gala especially, and Vampire shouting him out, proving that JDG are the next man up again for the rivals to BLG.
Oh, this one stings for Anyone's Legend, this type of head-to-head, of course, and very much so in the positional standings for the LCK and where things are shaping up towards. This was a big one for JDG to get on their side, keep that momentum, keep this track record rolling. The improvements have been there. These were things that were necessary after the way things played out in the first split and first stand for this JDG team, but you knew and could have faith that there was room, there was still potential for this team to develop even more and to get stronger as a group. And I think right now you've seen a lot of that, and especially, again, you look at this head-to-head and the way things played out in this series against Anyone's Legend, very much so, that advantage for JDG. And how about your boy Hongq in the head-to-head in the mid lane? He absolutely was a big driver and deliverer for the side of JDG.
Yeah, it was a pretty sizable mid lane gap, pretty sizable bot lane gap, as Shanks and Hope continued to be the main suspects, and not in a good way, for AL going forward. But feeling great about Hongq and JDG to push up to BLG. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you absolute stunners. Thanks for hanging out as always, and we'll catch you on that flippity flip.